Well, hey, North Park Community Church. Pastor Luke here with another episode of First Looks. And we are going to be taking a big chunk for our passage this upcoming Sunday. We are continuing on in our study through the Gospel of Matthew, and we're looking at the way of the King. And our particular passage for this upcoming sermon is in 9:27 and it's going through 10:25. So it's a hefty chunk of scripture that we're going to be looking at, but I think it all ties together, and I think there's a unifying motif that runs throughout. This is kind of the transition between Jesus's long teaching in Matthew 5 through 7, followed by his exemplary life of that teaching from 8:1 up until the end of 9 here. And once we get into the beginning of chapter 10, we start his second big teaching block. And so significant here, but Matthew doesn't just do a hard stop at the end of his miracles and wonders and healings and then start a new teaching unit. It's woven together quite beautifully so that one launches into the other, giving a really noteworthy continuity here in this gospel account. So let's go ahead and look at it, and then we'll see what happens here. So here we go. This is, just so you can have a reference, this is the end of chapter 9. And what we have up here is healing of woman with blood and Jairus's daughter. It's the immediate context right above, and then it says, and as Jesus passed on from there. Okay. And that would be Jairus' house. He's leaving, he's moving on from there, and he's been doing healing. He's been doing miraculous works. Crowds are continually swarming him, bringing loved ones, friends, those who need to be healed. And here, two blind men. The duplicate too is something unique in Matthew's gospel, and I'm not going to get too much into the significance of that. It's just something that some theologians have taken note of, how Matthew tends to work in duplicates. But nevertheless, they're two blind men, and they follow Jesus, crying aloud, "Have mercy on us, Son of David." Now, just a little while before, at the beginning of 9, good grief, I can't remember quite the verse that it was. It's when he calls Matthew. It's in chapter 9, verses 9 through 13. Where Jesus is, he's talking to the scribes and Pharisees that are grumbling that Jesus is eating with tax collectors and sinners, and this is what Jesus says to them: "I desire mercy, not sacrifice." And here they are. They're basically asking for Jesus to show the mercy he says that he's all about. And so when he entered the house, the two blind men came to him and said to them, and Jesus said to them, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" Now, this is unique because it's typically Jesus will comment on faith. This is in Matthew. Jesus will comment on faith. Here, he inquires of theirs. And then they said to him, "Yes, Lord. Do you believe that I am able to do this?" "Yes, Lord." They do believe. They affirm the belief. Then he touched their eyes. And this is just always so Jesus-like. Is often touching even when not needed. I think it shows his tenderness. He heals the centurion's servant from afar, and he clearly does not need to touch them, but he touches them, and it just, I think, shows his tenderness, his compassion, his heart for those who are hurting, and he touched their eyes, saying, "According to your faith, be it done to you." Their eyes were open, and Jesus sternly warned them. This is a very strong word here. In very intense word, actually. Sternly warned them. See that no one knows about it, but they went away and spread his fame throughout all that district. So they did a really terrible job doing what he asked them to do. Why Matthew includes that? It could be a couple different reasons. But nevertheless, it's the case, and because I've got a long passage, I just need to keep moving here. So as they were going away, so the blind men go away, behold, a demon-oppressed man who was mute was brought to him, and when the demon had been cast out, the mute man spoke. So when he was cast out, the mute man spoke. So it seems that his inability to communicate was somehow tied to the demonic possession that was happening there, and the crowds marveled. This is something that happens often. The crowds are marveling at Jesus, saying, "Never was anything like this seen in Israel." But the Pharisee said, "He casts out demons by the prince of demons." Now let's go ahead and capture that, because that's going to come back to us. He casts out demons by the prince of demons. Okay, now don't forget that. Now, Jesus went throughout all the cities and the villages. It's important to see where he's going here. All the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom. And he was healing every disease and every affliction. When he saw the crowds, he had compassion on them. Had compassion because they were harassed, helpless, like sheep without a shepherd. And he said to his disciples, "The harvest is plentiful." Well, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Now, just a couple things to note here. Sheep without a shepherd. This is an often used metaphor for God and Israel in the Old Testament. Also, again, take note of this here: healing every disease and affliction, and gospel of the kingdom. Okay, and then cities and villages. Notice all that's going on right here. This is a important transition paragraph. Okay. Now, one other thing that I want to take note of is look with me at what we have here. We have blind. We have mute. And I might be reading into this. It's possible. I'm going to sit with it for a little while. I'm going to look at some other Old Testament passages. I don't know if this is nothing or if it's something. And so, but it popped into my mind while I was reading this. It made me think of Isaiah chapter 6 is one example, but there's many other passages that that interact with this here. And then here we go. Gospel of Kingdom. Look over here with me at, this is Isaiah chapter 6. Famous passage. The holiness of God passage. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up. The train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face. With 2 he covered his feet. And with 2 he flew. One called out to the other and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. The foundations of the threshold shook, and the voice of him who called, the house was filled with smoke. And he said, Woe is me, for I am lost. This is Isaiah responding. Woe is me, for I am lost. I am a man of unclean lips. I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. My eyes have seen the glory of the Lord of hosts. And one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hands burning coal that he had taken with the tongs from the altar, and he touched my mouth, saying, Behold, at last this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away, your sin is atoned for. So, is there connection here? Because look at what it says next. And I heard a voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send, and who will go for us? Okay. And then I said, Here I am. Send me. And he said, all right. Gospel of the kingdom. And this is going to come down here too. Who will go? Send me. And then this is what Isaiah is to say. Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, do not perceive. Make the heart of the people dull, and cast their ears heavy. Blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Now this will also show up in Matthew 13 with parables. Is something very similar happens there as to why Jesus tells parables. Now, we've got a healing of a blind man, healing of a mute man, and then we have this kind of gospel transition here. And then, I'll come back to the disciples here in a second, but just catch this. Well, I guess just for the sake of time, we have the list of the 12 disciples, and he gave to them authority over unclean spirits, to cast them out, and to heal every disease and every affliction. Healing every disease and every affliction. To heal every disease and every affliction. And the name of the 12 were right there. Simon Peter, Andrew, James, son of Zebedee, John his brother, Philip and Bartholomew, Thomas and Matthew, the tax collector, Thomas son of Alphaeus, and Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, and Judas Iscariot who betrayed him. I could go through each of these and just talk about that, about how a zealot and a tax collector would have hated each other deeply. Then we have Judas right here. That's interesting, right? That the one who would betray him is allowed to partake in these things that are happening. This healing of diseases and casting out of demons. Like he's able to be a part of that, which is just wild. And then it says these 12 were sent out. He sent them out, instructing them to go and to proclaim as you go, the kingdom of heaven is at hand. There it is. And so, who will go for us? The kingdom of heaven is at hand. And so, we could keep going. Let me just make a couple other comments here, because I don't want this video to end up too egregiously long. But maybe just a couple other things that are worth noticing here. He says, heal the sick, raise the dead, cleanse the lepers, cast out the demons. This is all miracles Jesus has performed. Point: disciples are to carry forward the work of the kingdom. And this is going to the towns or villages. Notice we got Jesus up here, and cities and villages. And then he talks about if people accept you, bring your peace upon them. If they don't, shake your boots at them. We'll talk about that on Sunday. I'm sure you've heard something about it, but then he says, truly I say to you, it will be more bearable in the day of judgment for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah than for that town. And we see that there is responsibility. For what you do with the truth you receive. And he says, behold, I am sending you a sheep in the midst of wolves. Or like sheep without a shepherd. He's sending you out as I am sending you a sheep in the midst of wolves. Midst of wolves. So be as such an important word from Jesus here. I'm just going to highlight it. I'm sending you as sheep in the midst of wolves. So be as wise as serpents, but as innocent as doves. And then he says, goodness, we should do this, church. Beware of men. Notice here, sometimes the church equates innocence with naivety. And I think we just need to be careful to distinguish that. We can be kind and gentle and loving and all of those things while still being wise and shrewd. Jesus calls his people to be shrewd in Luke 16. Here he says, be as wise as serpents. And it's not loving to be foolish in the way that we interact with men who are wolves and men that we need to beware of. That's not loving to them to let them continue in their sin. It's not loving to the people who are taken advantage of when we allow it. It's not good for anybody when we think of our naivety and our foolishness, as virtues. Jesus resists against that, or presses back against that notion. He says, beware of men. They'll deliver you over to the courts of flogging in their synagogues. It's where the Jews go. And you will be dragged before governors and kings for my sake, to bear witness before them and the Gentiles. Who knew that better than Jesus? But Paul would walk in that same path. When they deliver you over, do not be anxious. Do not be anxious how you're going to speak or what you'll say. For you will speak for what you speak, but the Spirit of your Father will speak through you. So God will be with you. Doesn't that make you think of the Great Commission, Matthew 28? Behold, I am with you to the end of the age. Jesus says as a final promise. Brother will deliver brother over to death, father his child, and children will rise against parents and have them put to death, and you will be hated for my name's sake. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. When they persecute you in one town, flee to the next. For truly, I say to you, you will not have gone through all the towns of Israel before the Son of Man comes. There's something to be said here, but this is just the reality of persecution. And even to the extent of within the same family. Jesus says a disciple is not above a teacher, nor a servant above his master. It is enough for the disciple to be like his teacher and the servant to be like his master. If they called you the master, if they have called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more will they malign those of this household? And so right there we have exactly what Jesus talked about. This is what kind of bookends this right here. The Pharisees said he casts out demons by the prince of demons. And Jesus says, yep, they say it of me. How much more will they say it of you? And so there it is. There's a run over of a passage that I really think is fits together as one significant passage that teaches us a lot about what we are called to be doing as disciples of Jesus. We're to be continuing the work that he started when he came. We're to be doing it with the same power that he has because the Spirit of Christ dwells within us. We're to recognize that we will be persecuted and we'll be maligned. But for the one who endures, it will all be worth it. Hard, yes. Worth it, no question. Well, there it is, church. Look forward to seeing how this all shakes out to be a sermon. I love you, and I can't wait to see you on Sunday. God bless.